Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Daily Drop here on the Heel Report, which is a part of Tar Heel 24/7. I am publisher Andrew Jones. He is our basketball recruiting analyst and Tar Heel basketball analyst, longtime college AAU and high school coach David Sisk. We are going to dive into a little more discussion, fallout from the Tar Heels performance Monday night against Syracuse, the great stretch, and then the what they stretch to close the game. David's a coach. David's been in those locker rooms. He's had teams do pretty much a little bit of everything. So we'll find out what he thinks about it, how he would handle it as a coach. We're also going to talk about the game coming up this weekend, the greatest rivalry in American sports, Duke, Carolina, taking place at the Dean Dome Saturday night. Before we get into it, quick reminder, if you don't know or if you do know, 75% off one-year subscription, one-year VIP membership to Tar Heel 24/7. It's active now through Monday night. And obviously, if the Tar Heels win, you really want to get on it. So make sure if you want to be a Carolina Tar Heel insider, you must come over, become a VIP member, because you get access to everything that we do. Literally everything. The podcasts are just a small part, guys. Some of you that come up and talk to me at games say, I watch your podcast all the time. You're the podcast guy. I'm actually the publisher of one of the largest sites in the entire industry, and certainly the largest site covering North Carolina. And we do so much more on the site than you'll ever see on the podcast. So it's a drop in the bucket to get all the information you're going to get. Plus, David, it's pretty wild. A lot of people have been reaching out lately saying, how can we Venmo you guys some cash because we want to support the channel? You can do it by signing up to tarheel247.com. It's just $130, I think, is out of the $139 for a one-year membership, but you're getting 75% off if you act between now and Monday. It's a Carolina Duke week special. So, David, you are not a Carolina guy. You're not a Duke guy, but you are a deep-rooted college basketball guy. When you see, I'm going to ask you about the Carolina Duke thing in a few minutes, but when you see what happened the other night and then Duke kind of played sluggishly on Tuesday night, and you know how big this game is, can you glean anything from the late performance in the second half by both teams and think ahead the human nature factor that they're playing? So maybe both teams sort of clicked it off and subconsciously are moving ahead, or is there nothing to that?
Well, North Carolina, I think, had, if I'm not mistaken, the week game before they played Duke, the previous game that was played during the week. I think if my numbers, unless I'm off here, I heard them say on television they lost maybe 4 or 5. Is that right?
They often lose before they play Duke, and Duke has lost at times before it plays Carolina.
For whatever reason, I want to think they said they'd lost 4 out of the last 5 beforehand. I don't know if that's right or not, but it was a pretty big number. So it was obvious early on in the game. I said, they're not going to lose this one. You know, and Caleb Wilson came out with a lot of energy, and he wasn't going to let that happen. So, you know, I give him kudos to that. Whatever happens in the past, this team, you get caught up into that. I thought for the first half of that game, when I said it at halftime, I tweeted it out. I thought it was as good of a half as – and I know they've had big halves. But I think that they've kind of done what – in reverse of what happened to them in the second half. And I think maybe get another team, get them comfortable with a lead. In North Carolina, you start playing downhill and you start making shots and the whole thing just flips and it's a snowball, turns into avalanche and you can't stop it. The first half was just methodical. It was workmanlike. That's what I like from the teams. It really wasn't something that where it's on emotion. You're just going out playing a game. And I felt like that's what they did. They just went out and played and just went on to the next play and went on to the next play and not thinking ahead it wasn't like Georgia Tech where there was just a string of highlights to put on a reel. I mean, it was just, like I said, it was methodical. And so that stuff carries over and it travels and you can win games and you can go deep into March playing like that. I felt the second half, the lead went up to, 32. And then I felt like Georgia Tech, Syracuse, I'm sorry, kind of changed the way that the game was played, the tempo. They jumped into the press. Don't know that North Carolina was usually prepared for everything they see. It didn't look like they were overall prepared for that. And then I think you beat the press, and you've got Seth Trimble a lot of the times in the middle of the floor with the ball, and they don't attack. They pull it out. They start milking the clock, and they take the foot off the gas. And Syracuse makes a few shots, and they start playing like their life's on the line. It really was, because they were desperate. So you've got one team now passive, trying to bleed the clock. You've got another one just absolutely got the foot to the floor. And those kind of flips can happen. I agree with you. You've gone on record saying it's human nature. I kind of agree with that. I don't know that it's human nature to look ahead to Duke. I do think it's human nature for guys in their late teens and early 20s to get a big lead like that and then just kind of drop the intensity. I think you would see older guys doing that. And I just saw, and I highlighted it in the highlight reel in the film review that we did. And I wasn't picking on North Carolina at all. I wasn't trying to bash them. I put more positives out there on Twitter than I have negatives. But Hubert Davis said after the game, what we got to do from this is the problems that we had. And he said Dean Smith used to say, mistakes are good if you learn from them. Well, we've got to learn from them, so we've got to go into practice this week and make sure that we don't do that again. So I think that is really the tenor of the practice sessions this week before due. So what I wanted to do was say, okay, what are they going over? What are some of the things that they're looking at and saying we got to rectify? So, those were the things. A lot of them I thought was just mental mistakes.
Yeah.
And some effort mistakes from a comfortable team. And once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you just can't call a timeout and say, okay, flip the switch, let's go. I mean, it's hard to do. So I'm not putting too much into that. I thought they were really, really good for 30 minutes. And then you had that slide. But, we saw it against against Navy. We saw it earlier in the year against Radford, were two games that they got up right there, and then the lead, especially against Navy, it really got trimmed. So this is the third time it's happened, but I do think those other two times they were trying to build some roster depth, where I feel like this time it was just your team got comfortable. Yeah. So hopefully that's not something that'll rear its head. I don't think it will, but it's enough, I think, for the fan base, and once they're there to really, you can't celebrate the way you should. Like I said, you kind of feel like you're kissing your sister, out of that game. So, those are kind of the takeaways.
Yeah, fans have been pretty angry. After the game, I said in the three things and then what we learned that I would just toss the film. I wouldn't even look at it, but I thought more about it, and some of the specifics where things went wrong partly had to do with their approach to things. David, I'm a believer that when you beat a press, I can't stand seeing teams beat a press, a legitimate press, not a soft press, a legitimate press. They didn't get the ball across half court and then set up and have to try to beat the defense again. You got to beat them twice on one possession. I thought there were times in looking back that Carolina should have just kept attacking. Yeah. Don't worry about that. You're up by 30 points. You're up by 25 points. You're up by 20 points even. Keep attacking, because every bucket you score shortens the game. Because it would take that much more time for Syracuse to have to make it up. And they didn't do that. And that's kind of been where some of my criticism with Hubert has been in the past, where even in transition, the players would look over for a play to be called when the primary break's not there, and they wouldn't get into the secondary break. They've been doing more of that lately, getting into it. I think that they've actually had quicker possessions and getting quicker shots as a result, because he's letting them play ball more. That is a criticism as far as get the ball across half court, keep pushing it, even if it's 2-on-3, force the defense to move, because you still could get a bucket. The numbers don't mean you will not get a bucket. You can still get one, especially if you got a guy like Trimble with the ball in his hands, and you can always kick it back out and start things. So that is something that I think is they can learn from this. The other thing is the zone. Luka Bogovac was asked about what happened. He said, well, they went into, quote, some kind of zone, end quote. I don't think that they were prepared for Syracuse to do it as extensively as it did. I know the joke is, hey, Syracuse, they've been running zone for 50 years, but Boeheim's not the head coach. Autry generally plays man, though they have been playing more zone lately. And they were prepared for the zone at the end of the first half when they ran that play. So there is something to say about maybe the whole thing was just kind of off balance when they went up 32 points. Not just the players, but maybe Hubert, the staff, the discussion and everything else was. Pardon me, I've got allergies going on like crazy right now in the house. So that could have been part of it as well, because human nature doesn't only reside on the court. It can reside on the bench sometimes too.
First of all, let's talk about the pace. I would have gone in full bore Barry Switzer mode when he was at Oklahoma. When he said, we're not going to stop playing in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
We're not going to run a score up. But number one, if you want to press us down 32, we're going to get you out of that press.
Yeah.
And I agree what you say about beating the defense twice. And you're going from beating the press aggressive to backing up. So you're kind of changing some, your whole tempos there. And you've got to, if teams are going to do that down 32, well, they're not backing off. Well, you don't need to back off either. So it's an eye for an eye in this situation. And like I said, they threw the ball into the short corner a lot, which kind of makes me think that they weren't running a baseline. They weren't running the baseline and throwing back into the wide side of the floor. It kind of looked like Ohio State did when North Carolina broke the press out against them and everything went to the short side and they lost the game doing it.
Yeah.
So, and I think North Carolina will get that right. I think that they'll get size where they can, in the right spots where they can throw over it and throw the ball into the wide side. But, yeah, you've got to punish it. If they want to press, they're not throwing in the towel. They're not asking any quarters. So if they're not, you're not going to give them any. You've got to punish them. If they're going to press and you attack, you're not running score up.
In the 4 games since they got back from California, and the California trip, based on how they're playing and approaching how they're playing, seems like forever ago right now, even though it was 2.5 weeks. They had a first game back was Notre Dame. They went up 29, 76-47. The next game, they go on a 40-19 run in Charlottesville, in which Caleb Wilson and Henry Vessar combined for just 8 points. That means the other guys had 32 of those 40. They go to Georgia Tech. They get an early lead, go up 22. And even when Georgia Tech cut it to like 15 or 16, there was never any vibe in the building at all that this thing wasn't going to turn out to be a 20-point North Carolina win in that range. And then 40-14 against Syracuse. Why has this team been different? Why have they been more explosive? And why have they not been overly reliant? And by the way, Caleb didn't score the first 28 points in Georgia Tech, and they were up big early. Why has this team been far more explosive in these stretches since California and not always reliant on Henry and Caleb to be huge parts of their explosions?
The offense, and I said this, when they lost to SMU, when they lost to Cal, when they lost to Stanford, when they had the tight game with Wake Forest, offense wasn't the issue. It was defense. So I think the offense has been in a pretty good shape. But the thing that I've seen is there's a couple. The big thing is the offense is going through Caleb Wilson in the post. They've been very well prepared for double teams. And, man, they just look so comfortable with it. He makes the right reads. They're just not standing around. They've got people in position. Like, for example, they knew that the double from Georgia Tech was going to come from the from the passer. Everybody else, a lot of teams have been doubling another post across. They've been going from the top, and it's been skip passes. Well, Georgia Tech comes down the very first play Caleb doesn't even catch the ball. He jumps, taps it back out in midair. He knew where the trap was coming from. They missed 3, but Trimble had an open 3, and I went, they're ready. Georgia Tech, whatever they throw at them, they're ready. So I see that in the double team right now. Whatever they bring, and everybody's trying to do that, they're very, very comfortable. I think Luka has really played well about the last 3 to 4 games. He's starting to find it now. And I think that, you knew he could make threes. You brought him in to do that. But now he's putting it on the floor too. Now, I don't know the last couple of games if the athleticism part of it going into the ACC, they've not played the highest level teams in the ACC, but Syracuse and Georgia Tech had their share of athletes on the perimeter. And he's played really well. So it looks like he's adapting. It looks like he's getting comfortable. We talked about this in the last podcast. I don't know if it's coming off the bench. I don't know if it's changing spots on the floor, going from a 2 to a 3 or 3 to a 2. I don't know what that would be, but he is more comfortable. Dixon's starting to find it. He's had good games. So they're starting to click there. They've got an answer for what teams are doing against them defensively. So, yeah, I like the role that they're on the offensive end. But like I said, I don't think it's been an issue. I think it's been good all along, but it seems to be getting better.
Let me go back to 2 things you said. First of all, the offense. I think the offense has been a little bit better since they came back because Derek's starting. They have better spacing. They're not as stressed deep into possessions as they were prior. I don't know when their last near shot clock violation was, but they're getting more fluid looking stuff. They're not running as many sets, it appears. Yeah. And I talked to Luka the other night about what he's getting. I said, it looks to me like you're just getting more comfortable stuff. He had 2 catch and shoot threes against Syracuse. He had 2 step back threes against Georgia Tech where he probably didn't have to step back, but he did. And I think he had actually attempted 3. 2 of them went through. It looks to me like the comfort in his game is there, and he's able to have some success putting the ball on the floor because when he drives, he's just got one guy to beat. They're spread a little bit more, so help side's a little further away. And you're right. Syracuse and Georgia Tech are a little bit more athletic on the wing, and he's actually been able to drive against both of them. 4 of his 6 shots, I think, against Syracuse were inside the arc, which I think is a really good sign. So what is your take on him getting more comfortable, him adapting to the game at this level, but also Derek being a factor out there? By him alone, teams know he can shoot and he can drive some, that everything is just opened up a little bit more because all 5 players have to be guarded.
Last time I was on here, I said you could tell, even from watching on a couch, that I knew when Luka was going to shoot the ball even before he got it. And you could just tell, man, he was out there begging for it. And it didn't matter if he was covered, he was going to take it. I think he forced a lot. You could see a lot of his drives when he just run into somebody, couldn't get a shot up. Well, he's dribbling in 3 or 4 people. And the thing is, if you look at his assist numbers and stuff, he's a willing passer. And he's not a ball hog. But I think he gets at times, I think he just gets it in his head, okay, Caleb's had several shots. Henry's had shots. I got to get mine. So I think I think he's doing less of that, which tells me that he's probably in more of a comfort zone now that he fits, now that he's playing well, he's established his role. Maybe he doesn't have to prove things now. But like you said, it's more spread out. I see North Carolina, you hit it right on the head. They're not running a whole lot of sets. It's a whole lot of, either screen stuff to get Caleb on the block, high-low stuff, or they're a lot of ball screens, just side to side, just one ball screen handoff after another, and put the defense in a situation where they've either got to tag. If they tag, you've got shooters. If they don't tag, you've got to roll or you've got to drive. So it's not like – I think it's pretty simple because they're not trying to do a lot. If it's not like, okay, what does North Carolina do? And you have to reel off 15 things, and you're like, my Lord, how do they remember all that stuff? It's not. I don't think there's a lot of different plays that they've got to remember. They don't have 300 plays, and the action that they're trying to do is familiar. It's stuff that they're doing over and over and over and over. So you just got to make the reads. You've got the personnel. You just got to make the reads. So I think it's a simplified offense, and I mean that in the best of ways. That's not derogatory at all. A simplified offense where they've just got to play games and make decisions. It's coming to them. They know their reads, are making right reads, and they're able to get some good shots.
Two other questions about the offense. Going back to Caleb being doubled, he's worked really hard on that. He's watched a ton of film. He's worked really hard. And am I stupid to think that if you're Carolina, you're okay with him getting doubled now? You're almost playing into the trap because it's actually beneficial to you, because when he gets rid of it, and he's getting rid of it pretty quickly now, and he has the ability to throw the skip pass out of that thing, which is impressive for a kid his age. They're getting shots out of the double. If I were playing Carolina, I'm not so sure I would double him anymore. Not to as extensively as teams are. So Carolina, him learning how to deal with the doubles and them getting stuff quickly, because you immediately have an advantage when the ball gets out. And they're getting looks that way. How much of it is how they have improved as a unit, not just him, but them as a unit dealing with him getting doubled so often?
I think outman teams have to double, or at least they feel like they have to. And I think that Notre Dame's and all these teams have to come with that. They're getting to the tougher parts of the schedule now. Virginia didn't do it as much. I think you're going to see the Duke and other teams. SMU didn't as much. You're going to get in now, and you're going to see the teams that they're going to go up against are not probably going to throw as much of that at them. It's going to be more of a one-on-one deal. And so then the thing is, he needs to hit, when it's like that, he needs to hit aggressive mode. It just doesn't need to be where I've got used to skipping it out. I'm going to skip it out when I've got my guy on an island. That's when you really need to punish him. So, and I think he's got the talent to do it. He's comfortable with that. He makes the right reads, but they work on it in practice. You can just tell. And I've told you before, when they just VSAR dives from the top, and now your tag man on your front side has got to guard two. You've either got to pick him up on that dive. If you do, they skip over the top. And then if you take the back guy and you say, you're not going to skip it again, you get stretched out too wide. You get Henry rolling right down the lane. If they double from the ball side, you're throwing it out. They've worked on this extensively in practice. That's not blind running luck. You get into the games, you're prepared, and you make the right reads for no matter what they throw at you.
The other thing on offense I wanted to hit on, you said the offense was pretty good before, and I agree with you. The numbers don't defy that. I think the offense has helped the defense since they got back from California. And by saying that, they're shooting a higher percentage from the perimeter. So when they get those threes that they're taking, guys are hitting them more frequently. So you don't have the long rebound off a missed three and the run out for the opposition. They're shooting a higher percentage in general. And I think just the balance offensively, but we had previously seen times where they had an overload on one side that wasn't necessary. The spacing was bad, shot clock situation, rush shot. Everybody knows the shot's going up, and the other team gets the rebound. They get up the court and they get in a transition, and they get quick secondary break baskets. We haven't seen that as much. Even when shots go up, there's been more balance on Carolina's end of the floor, so they're back in transition better, and they're not giving up as much easy stuff. Would you say that is partly why the defensive numbers have been a little bit better since California?
Yeah, teams can't run when that happens. And also, I think the way that you're playing right now with multiple ball screens, with all that, you have more guards up at the top. In the past when North Carolina played, God, you have everybody down at the rim. You're throwing it inside and they're crashing the boards. You've got 3-4 guys down along the baseline. You've got nobody at the top. It's a stopper, and you can't do that. So I just feel like when they're spread out like that, you've got more people on the perimeter, you're going to have more guys that are going to get back. I want to run something by you. I'm going to switch roles with you because I want to ask the question.
All right.
Because you've been there, right up close to it. So even before the season started, one thing that you were really big on was you were saying that Hubert's got to trust his players more, and that came from somebody very close to him that told you that, and that's even before you heard it from him. That was a point that you were making. Monday night after the game, I told you when I turned the article in, post-game article into you about 1 o'clock in the morning your time, off a 6 o'clock tip.
And I was still in Bean Dome.
Yeah, that this was the hardest article that I'd ever written. I mean, it was like the old days if you had the trash can, it didn't work, and you roll it out of the typewriter and wad it up, throw it, roll in another piece of paper and gone. That's what I felt like, because I like, this is not it. This is not it. This is not it. And I told you, I just I couldn't wrap my arms around what in the words of Jack Buck, I can't believe what we just saw. And so that was kind of what I was thinking. And I said, I did something I've not done all year. I said, I'm going to watch the Hubert Davis press conference. So I watched the Hubert press conference, and a lot of people are aggravated by it. I was surprised by it. When it starts out, he's in there laughing. He's jovial. He's cutting up with you. And I'm like, something? I go back to the California game when they left the West Coast, and I told you, I said, I listened to Hubert, it sounded like they won. And there was the Seth Trimble presser after out in the parking lot. And there was just no stress whatsoever. And people were saying, well, they're not even taking this seriously. He's giving up. But I think now, and I watch it, maybe he is more relaxed. Maybe he is like trusting the players. He's looking at this and say, we played well. There's nothing to worry about. The guys have got it under control, because I definitely don't see panic from it. And you said he had to trust his players more. Those around him said he had to trust his players more. Seems to me like, even though it may be frustrating to people who maybe might want a Dan Hurley after the game, they're not getting it. It seems to me like they're getting a relaxed Hubert that maybe is telling his guys outwardly, hey, I believe in you.
A coach can destroy his team sometimes saying the wrong stuff too many times in a press conference. And also, kids can hear the same thing over and over and over to the point where they tune it out. They don't hear it anymore. And I think Hubert is he's a saying guy. He's a phrase guy. We hear it all the time, and we make little quips about it afterwards. The friends, the family, and the phone. Tweak, alter, and pivot. All that kind of stuff. That if you ask Hubert, what did you like about the way Luka fought off screens and went over screens in a game today, and he's going to spend a minute and a half telling you about how he loves coaching Luka, and how Luka's a great teammate, and he's a willing passer and a wonderful shooter when you asked him about going over screens. So you get a lot of that from him, and the kids hear it. But one of the things that I've been impressed about, and this goes back to the pod we did before SMU, people clobbered us when they went to the West Coast and looked like crap, and he was getting every arrow from the state of North Carolina fired at him. But he has improved in some areas that had to happen in order for there to be a year 6. One of them is communicating and how he communicates. And when he let Caleb address the team before Notre Dame, I thought that was huge. That was a head coach knowing that my voice isn't the only voice that needs to be heard. Here's a time when another voice needs to be heard. He's sensing these moments as a head coach better than he did previously. The other thing is, and when we go back to it, we've talked about this a lot. People that listen to every podcast have heard me say this a lot here in recent weeks, but he's riding with guys that are playing well longer. One of the reasons that it's one guy one game and another guy another game off the bench is because sometimes Jonathan Powell makes more sense in this game as opposed to another game. and he gets more minutes, and therefore he produces 7 boards against Virginia, 12 points against Syracuse. Hubert is sensing when, okay, it works more with this guy, so I'm going to run with him. And the absolute A+ I give him, and if this season ends up being really, really good, Hubert's going to get one of the stars at the end of the year, because when he sat Henry for the last 550 of Virginia and rolled with Jaren, that's a perfect example of a guy trusting Jaren, because he's trusting these guys when he senses, okay, it's this guy's night more than that guy's night, and he rolls with them. He's trusting them, and he's also feeling the game better. Most coaches would think they're crazy to not have a potential first-round NBA pick in the game in the last 550. Hubert saw the game, felt the game, read it, and said, okay, I'm rolling with Jaren, and they won. I think those are things that he's doing a lot better. There are still some things people could criticize. They can say what they want about the press conferences. I get it. You want him to reflect the anger and pain that you feel, but he's not going to. And you really don't want to have a coach that's irrational. You know, Roy would show the anger, but he was under control. And sometimes Roy would speak to the team through us. And also, if you talk to somebody who really knew Roy back in the day, sometimes he would use his sessions with the media almost like therapy sessions. Gets a lot of crap off his chest. He walks away, has his Coke. He takes a few sips of Coke, and he's good. And they go to practice the next day, and he'll whip them for a while, run them to death till they throw up, and they're all good. And the kids understood that. Hubert's method's different because he's a different person, a completely different personality. But it looks to me like he has a handle on things right now. The messaging that came out after the game Monday night was all on the same page. You don't find that a lot. And it was on the same page. And I think a lot of this is trust. It's trusting the guys when they talk to us. He very easily could have said, you're not talking to Seth Trimble out by the team bus at Berkeley, especially knowing that Seth usually says what the hell's on his mind. And Seth dialed it back some and got some heat for it. But as it turns out, Hubert calling it a bump in California was right. Seth not panicking after Cal out by the team bus, he was right. And maybe Hubert read that all along. I could be overstating it, but I'm sort of feeding off what you just said, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. I mean, Hubert may trust himself more now, too.
Well, I think it's paid off. You know, from whatever. I mean, you talk about at the depths of despair coming off the West Coast of where they're at now. You know, whatever he's done. I mean, I know there's people out there that won't. And look, I'm hard on him, and then there's times right now I'm complimentary either way. You know, we just try to call it like we see it.
Exactly.
And it doesn't get personal or emotional. And, you know, you got to be honest about it. And so, you know, I'm going to give him his flowers every chance I can get. So he, whatever he's done since that West Coast trip, man, it's worked. The player, I listen to me like the players believe. And, man, I mean, you're at a good spot. You're where you want to be going into the Duke game. You know, we'll see this time next week when we have this, if that's still the case. But I think whatever he tells them this week about improving, you can't finish the way we did. Here's the problems. Here's what we have to correct. I believe we're going to buy it.
Yeah, I agree. Whether or not he has flowers this time next week. It's next time you and I talk will be after I get back from Miami. So they got to play Duke and then go to Miami. I don't really know what Miami is yet. I think Miami has an inflated record. I still think it's a good team, and it's a very dangerous game for Carolina going down there, especially coming off Duke, no matter what happens with Duke. We'll deal with Miami at another time. Going into Duke, I think they're playing when you're flying back from California, when I'm flying back from Berkeley and I'm thinking ahead, I wasn't really much thinking about Duke. I'm thinking, well, how are they going to be Notre Dame? How are they going to fix a lot of this stuff? In the 4 games since then, they've created a scenario where if they do win Saturday night, I have a column that's on the site Wednesday or posted Wednesday about Gateway game. It opens up. It's like they're going through the arch in Seattle, in St. Louis, and they want to go west. It sort of opens up this new terrain where the season could go in a direction where suddenly Greenville becomes in play, a much higher seed becomes in play, and the reality that, hey, this team can really stick around maybe for a while in the tournament. Now we kind of maybe can stick around. Then there might be proof, yes, absolutely, they can stick around. We're going to learn a lot of these things Saturday night. And I often don't look at Duke Carolina games as referendum games, but I think with this team, the way it was put together, what it's had to deal with at times during the year, not having Seth for 9 games, the struggles they had almost right after he came back, and fans saying, it's all Seth's fault, that kind of stuff, people firing harpoons at Hubert and everything. If they can get a 5th straight win and beat Duke at home, I think it says an awful lot about their continued progress. This is not a sidestep game as much as it usually is because of the newness. And because you got guys like Lucas, he was asked about if he was aware of the Carolina Duke game being a big rivalry. And I think he said, yes, it is biggest game in United States, which is awesome. I love him for that. And the realness of it is great. We have it on the interview from the other day. I'm not mocking him. I'm actually celebrating him. I love that he said that, and he's totally fired up for it. I think that this is a tremendous opportunity for this team to cut the cord to California so we no longer talk about it and start looking ahead, because 7 of the last 9 games, David, are quad 1 games. This team has a massive opportunity in front of it to completely change the narrative about them, about their head coach, and about where they're headed in the postseason.
You think about great rivalries. So I just don't feel like anybody's playing up from the bottom right now, from underneath. You could take Alabama and Auburn on the football side, the Iron Bowl, and, you would hear Auburn fans the last couple of years, especially if it went to Auburn, say, man, we just hope Auburn's been a house of horrors. We just hope we can come in there and it's just Alabama's just haunted when they come in here and we can sneak up. I think for a good while during the offseason and through much of this season, some North Carolina fans probably felt that way. Maybe, who knows, we get them at the Dean Dome and we have the home crowd and they don't play as well and our guys get hyped up and we can pull one out. I don't even feel like that's the case. I feel like just what I hear nationally, I listen to the national guys and I've listened to a bunch of them the last few days. And I think they feel like that this is legitimately a heavyweight battle. And I feel that way. I've watched, we're taping this on a Wednesday afternoon. Since last night at 6 o'clock, I've watched about 5 hours of Duke and several different games. And I told you coming on, you felt kind of the same way. I think these teams are very closely matched. And that's happened as I've watched tape. Really, I just focus on North Carolina and I stay in my lane. So I don't watch a lot of other teams till it gets time. Teams in other leagues, I've not watched them any hardly. And then as North Carolina begins to play teams, I really, for about 2 or 3 days, focus on that team. When they went to Virginia a couple of weeks ago, they're coming off the West Coast, and you're thinking, man, this is not going to be good going up there. And then I watched Virginia play about 2 games, and I'm like, North Carolina matches up great with them. And we've seen, and there's been teams like Wake Forest you think you would blow out, and you would say, man, I don't think they match up very well with Wake Forest perimeter. This game could get really sticky. So we've seen it both ways, and I watch Duke, and I'm like, man, North Carolina matches up, and we'll get into this. But I don't think that North Carolina – I think both teams, obviously, in this kind of game, you've seen it, they just kind of let loose and go and play. And usually they play their best games. But I don't think North Carolina has to have an A-plus performance and Duke has to play at a C level for North Carolina to have a chance at win this game. And I think it's going to be a really good game.
Squeezing numbers, which is what we do sometimes. And I trust my eyes. I trust your eyes 100%. I do trust numbers. Sometimes numbers don't make sense. And when I look at Duke and I look at player individual numbers and I look at some trends, they're Duke. I've covered 300 plus Duke games in my life. I get all that. I know that there's a certain mojo that they have that rarely do other teams do. Carolina has it too. They're so similar. They've been so similar for so long. They look different on the surface, but behind the scenes,
They're really similar this year. I think there's been I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I've been with you now for a couple of years, and it's been a while. Not every year can you look at them and you'd say, well, North Carolina and Duke, boy, they look like two blue bloods. You know, they've not had a lot in common in certain years.
Yeah.
And this year they do.
I agree. So let me just throw some numbers out there. You tell me what you think. I'm gonna knock off about 5 different things very quickly, and you tell me what you think this means. I'll give a little bit of my take as well. I'm pulling the glasses on, so I apologize. Okay, I'm a big Isaiah Evans guy. All right. I think that when he gets going, Duke can go anywhere in the country. They got to play Michigan in a couple weeks. They play him in D.C., but they could go to Ann Arbor and beat them if Isaiah Evans is on. He's that kind of guy. But he's 10 for 39 from 3 in their last 6 games. And in their one loss, he had 4 points. If he has a big game Saturday, Carolina's in trouble, in my opinion. And I think limiting him and getting him frustrated early, because a lot of times you could tell what kind of game he's going to have by how he plays out of the gate. Your thoughts on Carolina dealing with Isaiah Evans?
I'm trying to look at matchups of who I would put on, who I'm going to put on who. And we had a talk before we got on here about lineups. And I told you I'm not so sure I wouldn't go back to Dixon, Trimble, Stevenson, Wilson, and Visar starting out. And you said, and you're right, Jaden Young, they played well there, so you don't want to change it up. But I think you've got to be careful with your lineups, not to stick with something too long because it's been worked in the past. I look at Isaiah Evans. He's averaging 14.2 points per game. I think he's a 3-level scorer. Especially when he gets on that, he's got a nice mid-range pull-up.
Yep.
He's long and twitchy, and he can get to the rim. He can make threes. But I look at him, he's shooting at a 33.5% clip, which is not what you would call a high number. 155 out of 234 of his shots have been three-pointers. So he's basically – 2/3 almost of his shots have been threes, and he's making 1/3 of those. So if he's going to do that, I like length on these guys. And I know I've heard a lot already about Seth Trimble on him when you put your best defender, perimeter defender on that. I'm not so sure I wouldn't like Trimble over on Caleb Foster, who's really, really quick and I think offers some matchup problems. And you put length with Jaron Stevenson on. And I know that, and here's the thing too, how much do they switch? In the past, when they played Kansas, you didn't switch off Darren Peterson. And Seth stayed really locked into him. But if you're switching all over the place, everything except 1 through 5, like they've done a lot of, you can get caught in some tough matchups. And like you say, you don't need to do that and let Isaiah Evans get hot. I think you find your best matchup and keep it on him. I think you find your best perimeter matchup and keep it on Caleb Foster. I think North Carolina's got guards who are going to have trouble staying on either one of those guys.
Yeah.
So, but I do feel like you can match up against them, but you've got to be very, very selective of how you defend.
The other danger of switching so much is Duke is going to cut you to death. They will cut and cut and cut. And you get in bad switches, they will eat alive those bad cuts. Whether it's a big on a guard, they can draw some fouls, or it's a Carolina with a guard on a bigger Duke player. If Isaiah Evans is going to score a bunch in the lane, you don't want it to be because he's cutting when he has an advantageous switch on him. All right.
They do a lot of action where it's not necessarily sets, it's our quick hitters, and then they get into stuff, into the ball screens and all that. They're not long, drawn-out plays, but they'll do 2 things. They might cross screen into a back screen. They might flex screen into a down screen. They take basic actions and they put two of them together. And it's always like a screen to screener deal. So they know how to set that up. If you're going to switch, they know how to get the matchup they want because they've got all that worked out and all that planned because they're going to run they can get you right into one, like with a ball screen. But a lot of times it's not that simple. They're going to run two actions. If they know that you're going to switch, they're going to get into the matchup that they want. So you got to be careful. That's where they get you because they got a lot of guards. They got some more dynamic, quicker guards, but they're bigger. But Boozer is such a matchup problem. So they get you. If you're just going to switch to be switching, they can really get you tied up in knots.
Yeah, especially when Malik Brown's on the floor.
Yeah.
They run a lot of that when he's on the floor. Patrick Gamba, I really like him physically. Seen him a lot up close. Just kind of waiting for him to be increasingly polished where he could be a high volume scorer. 6 times in the last 2 months, he's been in single digits. He has not been that prolific guy, but he is the kind of guy that can have a big game in a game like this. Depending on how Carolina deals with him, he can get Henry in some foul trouble if they go into him. I think it's going to be very interesting how Carolina deals with him and how many touches he gets. Because if Carolina doesn't switch, I think there's a chance he doesn't get that many touches in the half court because they don't run stuff through him a lot. They run stuff wherever Boozer is. They basically run it through wherever Boozer is. So what are your thoughts about him, how Carolina deals with him? And if you're talking to a Duke audience, is maybe their X factor Gamba because he can actually maybe have a big game depending on how Carolina defends things?
Well, if you look at what he's going to get, a lot of it is, and Boozer is such a good passer.
Yeah.
They just put the ball on the floor, they draw the back line help, and they just throws it up. And it's like so many of his shots are just lob dunks. So, he's got that kind of athleticism. So if you look at the numbers, so you got the 5-on-5 matchup with him and Henry. Henry's numbers are better, 16.8 points, 9 rebounds compared to 11 points, 6.2 rebounds for Patrick. But going to the field, but Henry shoots it a lot more. But you go into the field goal shooting numbers, Patrick 62.2%, Henry 62.4%. Patrick's taken 98 foul shots this year. Henry's taken 95. They're very close. Here's the difference. They're different players. Henry, 45.9% from 3. Patrick, 29.2% from 3. And Patrick's only shot 24 threes on a year. So
Henry's a better cutter to the lane, I think.
I think Henry Vasar. So you're talking about what can he do against him? Like I said, I don't see them running that much or just posting him up on the block and going to work. But I do see, I think just the garbage stuff, some things like that he tries to get him in foul trouble. Obviously, he's a lot bigger as far as physicality goes. Henry's leaner. But on the other end, Henry stretches him out.
Yeah.
Or he's a 45.9% three-pointer. So what happens then when Patrick has to go out and guard him? Because I've seen Duke a lot this year. We were talking about their defense. I think they're really good at walling stuff off, and I've seen games where Boston College and Virginia Tech and teams like that, they had open three-point shots and just didn't make them.
Yeah.
I mean, they can drive and kick out if they got that. Duke's like, well, we're not really even going to close out. We don't believe you can make this shot, and we're just going to grab the rebound. So if North Carolina Henry gets those open shots, he needs to make them. I'm still not so sure Patrick, even if he drains to a three, I don't know if Patrick will come out all the way. If he does, and they are long closeouts, Henry's got to drive him and get Patrick's hands on him and draw a foul.
That also opens up.
I think his ability to stretch the floor is maybe the missing link here.
That opens up drives for Caleb and for Seth as well, because help side's a little further away.
Yeah.
And if he is crashing down to help, you might be able to draw a foul or two that way as well.
Yeah. That's what I would watch for. When you're watching this game, Henry's going to pick and pop. He's going to stretch it out there. I think he's more out, and they may post Caleb up some. So when that happens, and they're going to interchange too with all the ball screens. They're one's going to be in and one's going to pop out. But when he does get out on the floor, how does Patrick guard him? I think that's going to be a big key in this game.
Some friends I know, people I know that are Duke fans, when they get really, really hard on Caleb Foster, he steps up, has a huge game, and then they're soft on him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get hard on him again, and then he steps up. Caleb Foster went for 20 at Louisville, and you and I talked about this before we hit record. He was spectacular that night. And he's why they won up at KFC Yum Center. But he has not scored in double figures since then. So what Caleb Foster shows up to the Dean Smith Center on Saturday, how much of that is him and how much of that is Carolina? And you already said you get Seth on him early. You don't let him get into the game. He may never get into the game. And I think that you could say the same thing about Isaiah Evans. Brendan Marks of The Athletic knows ball. You know Brendan. He knows ball. He knows what he's talking about. He's seen both teams up close a ton in person. He's like, look, Isaiah Evans, first few minutes, you kind of know what kind of game he's going to have. If you can, out of the gate, which is why you are a proponent for changing the starting lineup Saturday, if you can keep Foster from doing anything, getting comfortable at all, and Seth can get in his grill, and don't let Evans go off, you might be able to set a tone for the entire night right out of the gate. Is that the way you approach this with him?
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm saying you can't say, well, we're going to start this lineup and it be off kilter a little bit with a bad matchup, and the next thing you know, you're down 10-2 before you make a move. I just think you've got to come out of the gate. And here's the reason. Cam Boozer's not the guy that scares me. Now, he's going to play a great game, but it's going to be Cam against Caleb Wilson. Those are the fours, basically. And if he does slide down to 5, he's going to have Henry on him. He's going to be matched up pretty well no matter. And he may have a huge game, but he's still matching up against North Carolina's big boys. The guy that scares me is Caleb Foster, because if you do get – I'm just afraid with him if you do get
Jaden Young,
Seth Trimble over on Isaiah. I'm scared with how they match up. Caleb Foster's so quick. And I'm watching Boopy Miller, and I'm watching these other guys. I've got Stanford and SMU and Cal and Wake Forest and all of them just dancing in my head.
Yeah, a lot of those guys.
And those are memories hard to get out. So, and I think most North Carolina fans are like me. When you start talking about a cat quick point guard, you're like, oh, here we go again. So he's the guy. He only averages 8.7 points per game. But listen, at Louisville, why did they beat Louisville there? They were behind. They were behind double digits. And John Shire said, all right, Caleb, we're going to go 1-4 low a lot. We're just going to put the ball in your hands and you take over. And Louisville had nothing for him. He had up to 20s. He dominated that game in the second half. Yeah. That's what won the game for them. And he's got that. But he's taken 80 shots fewer than Isaiah. He's taken 160 shots less than Cameron. You can get on him. People can get on him about not being involved or having these off games, but he's kind of over there standing in the corner watching these other guys go to work too. It's not, and it's easy to do when you go through one or two players and all of a sudden you're the odd man out. So I'm just thinking here, if North Carolina doesn't match up right, I've just got these Louisville thoughts going through my mind here that all of a sudden Shire knows. He's seen where North Carolina's vulnerable, and that fits right into what Caleb Foster can do when he's on. Well, how do you get on? You get him involved. I think involvement's a big issue for him.
A quick program note. You and I are going to do something specifically on Caleb and the Boozers in a different podcast, and we'll talk a little bit about that matchup more with that podcast. But I have to ask you this, and we won't go too much longer. I was going to bring up Caden Boozer, but he's a freshman and he plays like a freshman. He's at 1 point in three different games of the last 8 games they played. I mean, he could have an impactful performance. I don't really know. I'm not going to go really too far on him as an individual. The other guys at Duke, I'm a big fan of Malik Brown coming off the bench as long as he's not fouling. You know, if I'm a Duke fan, I like Malik out there until he picks up 2 fouls in 18 seconds, that kind of thing. I like Carolina's bench in this game over Duke's bench. But as far as the starting 5, let's say we're talking to a Duke audience. And you're asked the question, okay, Duke fan, here's what you need to be concerned about. And how does Duke handle Caleb in a nutshell? How do they handle Henry? How do they handle Seth? And also Carolina has now developed a narrative that one of the other guys is going to have a pretty solid game, pretty big game. Mm-hmm. And if you're Duke, just like Hubert has no idea who that's going to be driving in the arena, John Shire doesn't either. So if you're Duke, how do you counter that? How do you prepare for that in Carolina?
I think Luka's going to have a pretty good game.
I agree.
Because Duke's a big physical team. They play on physicality. It is they average just, I think, around 66 possessions a game. It's way down. You watch them, it's just they have no inclination to run whatsoever. They're not interested in that. They want to walk it up and just pound on you. I think Luka matches up well with that. Like I said, when I watch them play, one thing is going to be with Henry, like I said, can he make the outside shot? If he does make the outside shot, how does Nabamba, and I say Patrick all the time because I cannot get that one's name out of my mouth to save my life. Yeah. So how does he match up? Does he long close out? What does he do? Cam Boozer and Caleb Wilson is going to be an incredible matchup. I'm not saying it's Magic Bird for Michigan State and UNC State. Or it's some of these other great matchups that we've seen in the past in college basketball where really good players have gone at each other. But
Olajuwon versus Ewing?
This is where legends are made.
OG stuff.
So if one of them has a big game and propels their team to victory, they'll play it for decades. You know, like I said, I think North Carolina is shooting a lot of threes right now. And I think Duke is willing to wall that lane off. And I think a lot of it could come down with these other guys that you mentioned. How do they shoot the three? Duke will give up, from what I've seen, Duke will give up the three. They're going to have to extend it defense some if they think North Carolina can make them. But if you look, Derek Dixon, 69 out of his 103 shots have been threes. Kyan Evans, and I don't know that this is a game for him. I just don't know if he's physical enough. But 90 out of 118 of his shots have been threes. Jonathan Powell, 74 of his 93 shots have been threes. Jaden Young, 31 out of 39 shots have been threes. I mean, they've got 4 guys right there on the perimeter who are kind of in that, what we call the committee. You know, you've got 3 guys, 4, and then the rest of it's scoring by committee. All they do is shoot threes. So I think Duke's going to let them have some of that, and the thing's going to be whether they make them. And if Duke does understand it and say, hey, we know what these guys do, we know why they're in the game, we're going to extend the defense and really get up in them to North Carolina, make them pay for that.
First 12 games, Carolina shot 32.3% from three-point range. The last 9 games, it's been 37%. And I think a lot of it's jumped up even more the last few because they're getting more open looks, like Luka said. So I think.
And let me say this. Yeah. I don't know that this game is going to come from Caleb Williams or Henry throwing the ball out of the post against a double. I just don't know that that's going to come. Duke doesn't have to. They're too big.
Yeah.
I think the three is going to come from ball movement, from Duke really rotating. They help a lot in the lane, being able to reverse the ball or skip the ball. That's going to be one thing. And then if they do extend it out, can you dribble? Can you get 2 feet to the paint, kick the shooters? I think that's where they come from.
One thing Duke has been excellent at, and I've seen it in person so many times against good teams, and this is under the prior regime because I covered John as a player, not as a coach, but they're very good at making you start your offense further out than you want to. And it'll be interesting to see how Derek handles that if that's the mission to him. Now, that opens up the floor for some other guys. That might be dangerous if you're Duke. But if they have to start the offense from when he's still on the state logo and he kicks it over to Seth, and Seth is suddenly in creation mode out there, it'll be interesting to see how Carolina, what they morph into offensively. They'll take away the sets, and I actually think not playing sets is an advantage for Carolina in this game. It's the better approach. You just rely on what those guys can do as players, their passing ability and their willingness to pass, and I think they have a better feel for each other right now. Okay, can Duke win this game riding Cameron Boozer to a historic type night, or does he need a second dude to have a really good night? And I asked that question with this addendum. Caleb Wilson's going to have another guy probably have a really good night. You should be able to pencil in something from Henry, right? So to me, Carolina's got 2 guys you expect to be in the 18 plus and maybe double-digit rebounds. Duke's got 1. So can Boozer alone beat them with the other guys just having enough, or do they need something big from a Foster, from an Evans, maybe even from a Gamba, or even Dame Sarr suddenly playing like he hasn't played like since he arrived, really, like they expected? Can Duke win that way?
I'm going to respectfully disagree, and I believe they've got a second guy, and I believe it's Evans.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But he's not a gimme every night, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I still really bad shooting nights. Hold on, let me qualify. I love him as a player, and when he's on, he's a joy to watch. He's sensational, but it's hard to pencil him in for that good shooting night, is what I'm saying. So he's 10 for 39 in their last 6 games. Now, if he's 7 for 10, it's lights out. But if he's 1 for 10, Carolina's in great shape. That's what I'm saying. And they don't really know what they're going to get from him there.
I've just seen enough good from him. And like I said, I feel like he's a 3-level scorer. I think he can get to the rim. I think he's got a beautiful pull-up game. Like you say, the threes can be spotty. He's only making 33.5%. But if I'm North Carolina, I would be prepared. Look, we know Boozer is going to get his. I think Evans is going to get his. My thing is to them, do they have a 3rd and 4th guy? So instead of me saying, okay, can he do it by himself? I think Boozer will get his. I think Evans will be okay. So then I'm saying, okay, can it be number 3 and number 4? Because as you look at the stats, you go back and look at them. We talked about North Carolina and Duke being similar. Okay, you've got a big front line. You've got an All-American freshman lottery pick. You've got an All-American freshman lottery pick at the 4. You've got 2 monsters. 7-foot centers. But then you can also have, you look at Isaiah Evans, he's averaging 14.2 points per game. Seth Trimble's averaging 14.1 points per game. Sarr is long. Stevenson is long. They've not necessarily been scorers for them this year. Foster's averaging a little bit more than Dixon. You talked about the bench, but if you look at Duke, you go look at the box scores from one game and look and see who the 3rd scorer's been. And then go to another game and you'll go, hey, this guy had 15 the last game. Did he even play this game? This guy that I don't even remember from 3 nights ago, he had 18 last night. North Carolina's been like that. So I think Duke's got that committee too. And that could be a big part of this game for both teams because North Carolina's going to have another guy too.
Yeah.
Who has the guy that nationally may not be the marketed name, may not have the brand, who could be that guy who could step up? And I think that's going to be a big key.
If I'm a Duke fan, I'm thinking, this might be a game where Hymenia can get them some buckets. The way he plays, he's a little bit of an attack guy, and he's got a nice little stroke. He's got a nice little off-the-glass game. It'll be interesting to see if he comes in. He gives them 9 minutes, but he's 8 points in 9 minutes, something like that can really kind of lift them over the edge. Carolina, on the other hand, is a Jonathan Powell, who could be that guy as well. And my point about Evans is that you can't pencil certain things in. That's why I go back to what Brendan said. Brendan's like, look, if he makes his first 2 shots, oh, man, you're in trouble. If he misses his first 2 shots, he's going to keep shooting until he hits them. And sometimes it hurts them offensively. So that's going to be fun to watch. I love these games. They're so much fun. It's a blessing. This will be the 67th I have covered.
Wow.
It is an incredible blessing and honor to do this. It's a privilege. I don't take it lightly. I don't ever take it for granted. I'm so excited that Noah Weiskopf gets to do his first one. He's done Ohio State, Michigan in football, so now he gets to do this. I think there's a lot of very comparable in the rivalries. And for me, I approach every game, especially with this team, the same way. Like I'm really curious how they come out tonight, like how they start, how they adapt during the course of the game. This one is just going to be, okay, what is their high end? How many guys bump their heads on the ceiling in this game? Because the team that has more guys that bump their heads on the ceiling wins. Because they're going to play that kind of game. These teams, they don't ever play each other, and it's just a crappy game. It doesn't happen. They play great games. So many of the good pops in games like this when these teams meet. And I think that's going to happen Saturday night. And if a Powell bumps his head on the ceiling, and a Dixon bumps his head on the ceiling, and a Trimble does, I think Carolina's in great shape. If you start having guys like Hymenia and Sarr and some of them, and Caden Boozer comes in and produces like he hasn't for a while in however many minutes he gets, then Duke's in great shape. And that's the fun thing about this. And that's why there is a lot of uncertainty. You're right. Wilson and Boozer, they're going to go off. It could be historic. Or they could just cancel each other out. So who steps up? Who's next? That's probably what happens, David.
And I'm interested too. One thing I've noticed about North Carolina Duke game, really, since I've been covering North Carolina with you for the last year, Roy Williams on, is when North Carolina plays Duke, and I've seen it several times, and it's been the North Carolina teams that weren't as strong. And they just come out and you watch the flow of the game and you go, this is a favorite pitch. They're up and down, they're running, everybody's making shots. I don't remember North Carolina playing like this. I don't remember North Carolina playing. It's like the coaches almost say, okay, this is the big stage. This is about the players. Everybody's watching. You guys just go out and play. That's almost the way I feel like the coaches feel. I don't see the coaches overcoaching in this game.
No.
They may overcoach when you play Boston College or Pitt, but they don't overcoach when they're playing each other. Everybody knows what it's about. Both coaches played in the game. They understand it. So you have that, and you've like, man, I don't remember North Carolina playing as fast. They've been a walk it up team, and I don't remember shooting this well and them playing this hard, and so it does that. But in doing that, where you have that pace, one team can get up and get a lead, and the other team can maybe not be able to play through that run. So you look up, and one team's ahead by 15. So I have to think too, if North Carolina gets ahead of Duke by 15, is Duke able? Do they have it to come back? If Duke gets ahead of North Carolina by 15, can North Carolina come back? So that's a question. I don't know. That's a question I'll have. And I think it's when you have games like that, that's when you learn. North Carolina came back against Virginia. If that's the case, we've seen that. I've watched Duke come back against Louisville. So you just learn so much about yourself in this game.
That's so much fun. I'm not going to ask you to give a prediction, but you can if you want.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've talked about so much what we expect in this game. I'm just going to say this. Like I said, I'll close it the way I started out. I feel the same way about this game I felt about Virginia because, North Carolina was coming off a low going to Virginia and say, all right, let's look how bad this is going to be. And you're watching it, you watch one game or you watch a half and you're like, man, North Carolina matches up with them. And then you watch another one and you go, it wasn't a fluke. You watch another game and you're like, there's no fluke here. They really match up well. They can win this ball game. And I feel the same way as I watch North Carolina, as I watch Duke play all these games. I'm going to watch more tonight. I just really feel like North Carolina matches up here. And I feel like Duke matches up with North Carolina. I think they both, and you hate to say whoever plays best, and that's an easy cop out, but I don't watch the tape at all and say, man, North Carolina's in trouble here, or Duke's that. You look at the analytics sites, you look at the Ken Palms, the Evan Mayakawas, and the point differential on this thing's crazy. I mean, there's not a 15-point disparity between these two teams. It's not even close. I think it's just going to be a fist fight.
I'll put it this way. If the two teams went over Thursday night without anybody knowing and they played a pickup against each other over at NC Central, it would be an incredible game without anybody else there.
Yeah.
That's what I think about these two teams right now. I agree with you 100%. Don't forget, everybody, 75% off 1 year VIP membership. It's a Carolina Duke special. It runs through Monday night. Act now so you don't forget. And guys, our podcasts are just a fraction of what we produce as a site. We've got a lot of people on our staff. We had 4 people covering Carolina Baseball Media Day. That's how extensive things are at Tar Heel 24/7. You can come over, take advantage of this deal, and guess what? You can be a Tar Heel insider too, and you get access to David's film reviews. And for the little clips that you see out there, that's a minor part. It's the depth of the explanation where so much value comes from. So you got to sign up, guys. If you love recruiting, got to sign up. If you want the Dylan Mingo chatter, you got to sign up. And plus our message boards are phenomenal. Ton of people there. Largest site covering UNC athletics. That's us here at Tar Heel 24/7. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel. If you have not, share this video with your Carolina Tar Heel friends. Let them know we're here. Go ahead and hit that notification bell so you get updates every time we upload, and hit the like button too. And remember, don't send us a Venmo. Don't ask about it. Just go sign up. That's great. That's perfect. That means you get a lot more bang for your buck. He's David. I'm AJ. We appreciate you stopping by.